Hello and welcome, everyone. Delighted to have you here. We've actually got a fabulous crowd online today. Very excited about the conversation as well. Thank you. Many of you submitted questions ahead of time. We do have those questions, and I'm guessing you'll find tremendous value in answering those as we go, building in much of the information you asked for in those advanced questions as we go through the program. In addition to that, if you have more questions while we're having the conversation, please feel free to type them in your question panel for the webinar. I will be monitoring, watching that as we go through. So fast 30 minutes, let's get some really good concepts and ideas on conflict coaching. Our agenda for the conversation today. We'll talk about how to handle conflict, of course. That's our big focus. So we're going to dig into the reasons behind conflict, what happens and what the results are from that happening, a few things worth knowing regarding conflict, skills that make a difference in terms of managing conflict, and then we'll spend time on the actual conflict coaching process. We will talk some what ifs, how do you handle that, the reasons conflict coaching works, and then give you some great resources as a follow-up. Diving into how do I handle conflict more effectively. The first key, of course, is recognizing what's behind it and being open and accepting of that. Part of that is involving recognizing the differences in personalities. Everybody comes to the table with just a little bit differently. Of course, the communication skills are huge in terms of how you manage the conflict. Listening skills are huge, and the process. So that's where we're going to go today. We will get to that process. Now, the reasons behind conflict. Sometimes it's a simple misunderstanding or a misperception. How often does that occur? We do that frequently where, oh, okay, well, I thought they meant this, and then you find out it was something completely different. I'm amazed doing conflict mediation for years with the court systems how often that was the case. Fear is a big factor. People are afraid for their own security, afraid of what's happening, the outcome, the risk factor, etc. So that is a huge piece. Confusion. They're not sure what's going on, and it very much builds from that misunderstanding or misperception in many cases. A difference of opinion is a big one, and then if they're just completely disengaged. Now, in terms of the approach to conflict, what happens? So first off, you'll have people that will just give in or they withdraw completely. You have people that will promote or sell their own ideas, and very often without hearing anyone else's idea. You'll have people come in and they have the answer, they know how to do it. And then you'll have people that want to go research it and analyze it first, and they're not ready to solve it yet. So all factors in terms of outcomes. Now, what are the results? In 60 to 80% of the difficulties in different organizations come from the strained relationships between the employees. And it's not about skill, it's not about motivation, it's about that conflict between employees. Another statistic for you, the typical manager spends 25 to 40% of their time dealing with conflict. That's expensive. That's really expensive. That's a lot of time invested in something that is so easily managed when you do it right. And that statistic came from the Washington Business Journal. Now, Fortune 500 senior executives, according to Mediate.com, spend 20% of their time in litigation. The conflict's gone to that next level. So, again, a big factor. Now, an interesting point for you, if conflict is avoided, it's not going to go away. It's still there. It's going to come back. Conflict can be discussed in a way that respects absolutely everyone. It's how you handle the conversation. So Very, very significant insight there. Now, another one. When you do handle conflict, until everyone has been heard and understood, that conflict is still going to be there. You may think you're moving forward and making progress and talking about solutions. It will come back. Each person involved has got to know they've been heard and understood. When everyone engaged in deciding the solution, your follow-up goes way up. One of my favorite statistics back in the day when I was training people to do mediation for the court systems is 60% of the time when people walk out of a court case, they're saying, I don't care what the judge said. I am doing this my way. And the reason is they weren't engaged in the solution. When you use the process we're going to give you here, better than 90% of the time the people involved will come up with a solution and follow through because it's theirs and they own it. It makes a huge difference. Now, in terms of skill, it is incredibly important that you have clear, direct language. We call that assertiveness. In coaching, for those of you who are trained as coaches, ideally a big part of your training was how you communicate, how you say what you say, the specific techniques for what we call assertiveness, which is in fact a learned skill. And it's learning how to communicate in a way that's respectful to everyone. Another thing we often talk about in coaching is short and simple. Well, that's clear, direct. Short and simple is clear and direct. Another essential skill in effectively managing conflict is the short and simple questions that are completely open to whatever possibility that person wants to come up with. That's huge. So being prepared, ready, comfortable with short, simple questions. Also is the ability to flex to the different personalities in the room, because everyone comes in with a different approach, a different way of managing conflict. So we talked about people that withdraw. They're primarily passive in their communication style. They're using emotion in terms of how they're processing. We talked about people that promote their ideas. They're emotion-based and they're more aggressive in their communication style. We mentioned that there are people, hey, I know the answer. They're aggressive in their communication style, very much logic-focused. And those that want to withdraw to research and analyze first are logic, of course, and also passive in their communication style. Well, the person who is doing the conflict coaching, facilitating what's happening here, the skill to adjust to each of these different personalities is huge. And that goes back to what you gained in the coach training. Conflict coaching is a wonderful opportunity for addressing it, and your coach training is building those people skills for you. Now, of course, the listening. In conflict, back to that, until people are heard and understood, they are not ready to solve this issue. That requires listening actively with intention and rephrasing what that person says, because just saying, okay, I heard you and I understand does not work. How many times do people do that? Oh, I understand. You're thinking, yeah, no, you don't. That happens in conflict as well. When you rephrase what they say, then they know you heard them, and that's huge. Now, the process itself. We're going to go through what I call my STOP model. Great acronym. This is going to make it super simple for you to remember the 4 steps. So some of you have heard these 4 steps. This is a way to make it easier. When you have a conflict, the first thing that must happen is that everyone gets a chance to tell their story. So let's talk about how this applies in the scenarios you're dealing with. If you are coaching an individual who is dealing with a conflict with someone else, the first thing you do is have them tell their story, what it is that's going on. And when they tell their story, you actively listen, you rephrase back what they're saying, and reflect back their emotions behind it. When they are done telling their story, you want to ask them, okay, this other person you're dealing with in this conflict, what's their story? If they were here, what are they going to say? And you have your client tell you the other person's story, because the idea of hearing all the stories is getting all the different sides to it and creating that understanding. Now, let's say you're dealing with conflict with a group. A few of you talked about that. Maybe it's a meeting or a group process, whatever it is. How do you handle the story part? Well, if the group is a dozen people or less, it's going to take some time. You are going to actually hear each person's story. The process there, how do you know where to start? So an easy way to say is, hey, it doesn't matter to me who goes first, who wants to start, and give them the option of choosing. If in the group nobody's choosing, your backup plan is this. Simply have a neutral reason for choosing someone. So, for example, saying, okay, what I do is if there aren't any volunteers, I'll ask the person to my left to go. So, who's on my left here? And I ask them to go first. And then I just move in a circle around the room. Now, here's what's going to happen. As each person tells their story, chances are the other people aren't really listening. They're not hearing it. They don't really care. So what do? Well, we've got to get past them feeling like they want to tell their story. And the way we're going to do it is this. We actively listen to the person telling their story, and we rephrase what they said. For that individual, they feel heard and understood. For everybody else involved in the conflict, while they may not listen to that individual, they will listen to me when I rephrase the story. And so we're increasing the likelihood of having the understanding there. We continue around until everybody has had a chance to tell their story. Now, some of you have really big groups. Gee, it's unrealistic for each person to have a chance to tell their story. In a case like that, what you want to do is break them up into small groups that are coming at it with the same position. And then you put them in their small group and have them select a spokesperson who will summarize it for their group. And then the spokesperson for each of the small groups will tell the story for that group. And that way each group gets heard through their spokesperson. That's in a case, for example, union disputes or something like that, where you have a lot of people involved. Then, once you've got everybody's story out, the next step in the process is to make a list of topics. Every issue, concern, whatever it is, that's got to be addressed in this conversation. Now, please note the word together. Yes, they must do this list together, because here's what's happening. If each individual is making their own list, they are still separate and divided. By having them do this together, one list, it's actually the first step in bringing them together. So as the person doing this, if I'm coaching one individual, I have them say, okay, what are the topics that you believe are important in this conversation? And I have them give me their list. And then I will say, okay, and if the other person you're in conflict with were here, what are the topics they think are important? And that way you get that combined list. If you're doing it in a group, you're literally asking the group, okay, what are the topics that we're going to address here today? And you get that list. And everything everyone gives goes on one list. You want to have everyone see the list as you're developing it. So if it's 2 or 3 or 4 people sitting at a table, it's fairly simple to have one piece of paper. You do the writing, listing the topics, do it in big letters so everyone can see it, and do it down the middle of the page. Seriously, because if you put it on one side of the page, it starts to feel like you're leaning toward one side or the other. Interesting nuance. Now, if you have a larger group than that, you may be using a whiteboard. You might actually have a screen projecting a computer image and you're listing it there, whatever it is, so that everybody sees you've developed that list. Now, once you have your list of topics, the next step is to decide which topic you're going to talk about in which order. So what does that mean? That means asking them, hey, what's the first one to talk about? We're going to go through all of these. Where do you want to start? Or It may be, hey, we're going to go with the small win because of how much conflict there is in the room, and it may be obvious you can figure out what the small win is. Alternatively, it may be, well, there's this one topic that until we deal with this, nothing else matters, and you go there. So whatever your process, you're choosing which topic is going to be discussed first. Then your second step in the process is exploring options. Now, here's the key to this. Everyone involved, you want them giving options, and you want people giving multiple options. Because if there's only one option coming from someone, in their mind, that's all there is, and they're done. And they will dig in their heels on that one option. So what do? If you're coaching an individual, you ask them, okay, what do you think the options are for addressing this, for handling this, for making it work? Okay, that's one option. What's another one? What's another one? And you ask for multiple options. If they start getting stuck, sometimes people say, I don't know. It's amazing how effective it is to say to them, if you did know, what would the answer be? And they'll come up with something. An alternative to that is saying to them, okay, if you asked advice from someone else, what advice are they going to give you? And you may be specific. You might say, hey, if you're your mentor, or you asked a colleague for advice, or a friend, or whoever else it is, they might ask for advice. So you're pushing them to come up with different options. And then what you're going to do is say, okay, and if the other person were here, what options do you think they are going to come up with? And you have them generate options from that other person's perspective. Now, if you are coaching in a small group, it's that group brainstorm, and you're really asking questions until everyone has put out several options, and you're creating that list where everyone is seeing all the different options. They can visually look at it. In the large group setting, it may be that you have your spokesperson from each team getting options from people on their team, and then that spokesperson is the one who's putting those out with everyone. So you generate the multiple options. Then, of course, it's about picking, okay, which option are we going to go with here? Now, sometimes it's obvious, hey, this is the one that's going to work, and we go there. Sometimes we start eliminating ones we know we're not going to use, and we back into what will work. And sometimes it's a mix of several of the options that have been presented during the conversation. Whatever your process, whatever's going to work on that particular topic, once you know which of the options you're going with, your fourth step in the process is creating the plan. Now, the plan has got to be very specific and measurable. You want to know exactly what is happening, when it's happening by, and who is responsible for making it happen. So how does this work? If you are coaching an individual who is dealing with conflict themselves, it may be that their plan is really focused on how they're going to go have the conversation with that other person. And in creating that plan, they may want to role play the conversation with you as their coach, and that's an option too. So their plan is really about having the conversation to resolve the conflict with the other person. When you have everybody involved in the conflict there, small group, large group, whatever it is, you're developing the specific action plan. Now, very, very specific. My favorite example, if somebody says, okay, well, we're going to communicate more. We do not have an action step. What do you mean communicate more? How are we going to communicate more? What's happening here? So we don't know what that means yet. How do you handle it? You say, okay, great, you're going to communicate more. How are you going to communicate? When are you going to communicate, etc.? Oh, okay, well, we'll talk every week. Okay, great. Which day of the week? Okay, great. What time of that day? Okay, and how are you going to talk? Are you talking on the phone? Are you talking face-to-face? Are you emailing? What's going on? So you get very specific and measurable with your plan. Now, here's what's profound with this. The fact that everyone is heard and understood, the fact that they're engaged in developing the list and then developing the options and then choosing the option and creating the plan, means it really is theirs. It's fascinating how much the reasons mediation, conflict mediation work are similar to the reasons coaching works. And you put the two together, it's absolutely unnatural. Now, one of the questions somebody was asking is, how do you know when you use this? Well, here's the bottom line. The process itself very much overlays what we do in coaching. We have clients share what's going on, give us what they want to focus on, develop their options, and create their plan. When it's the obvious conflict, the process is as we just described. So it's very powerful in terms of communication, period, dot. Now, I did promise we'd talk about some of those what ifs, so let's go there. What if you're dealing with emotions? So let's go through some of the very common emotions that come up. So one is anger. What if somebody's really angry? What do you do? Well, let's talk about that for a second. There's a couple of possibilities. Number one, if it's someone who's in need of a vent, if you will, they just want to get it out and get it off their chest, very often it's a matter of giving that time so they get to vent. Give them a minute or two, as long as they're in control. And you'll be surprised how often, if you are truly listening to somebody, after about a couple of minutes, they're done. They've got it out there because they know you truly listened and heard. You do that by actively listening. You rephrase to them what they're saying, verifying that understanding, and demonstrating that you get it. And that goes a long way to managing that anger and diffusing it. Now, if you have somebody that is absolutely out of control, here's a way to handle it. And you're probably in a case like that talking a group session, because if you're doing a one-on-one coaching, them being completely out of control is going to be unusual. The key to someone who's out of control with the anger, if you say, you know what, you need to calm down, they're going to get angrier. So instead of making it about them, say, I'm going to take a break. Now, here's what's key. If you say, we'll talk later, that's like blowing them off. No, later ain't going to happen. We all know that. So instead, say, I'm going to take a break. I want to go to the bathroom. I want to, whatever it is. We're going to start again in 20 minutes or 15 minutes. 15 to 20 minutes is enough time for them to calm down so that when you do come back, you can have the conversation. You come back and you start out with saying, okay, here's where we were at. I understood these pieces. You summarize what it is they were talking about. Now, when you do that summary, neutralize what they were saying. So instead of using the attack, angry words, use words that are more neutral about it. So instead, if someone said, oh, that person's such a jerk, I'm not going to rephrase that. What I'll say is, you're frustrated by behavior of others. Done. It's much more neutral, and it's what they said. So I will bring everybody back after our 15 to 20-minute break. I'll do a quick summary, and then I'll ask a question in terms of where we're going to go next. Maybe they've had their chance to talk, and I simply say to them, what haven't I heard? So it's a clear signal of I only want to hear new information so that we move it forward. Alternatively, we move on to the next person, etc. So that's a couple of options for dealing with anger. Now, how do you deal with tears? What if somebody starts crying? Well, first thing I'm going to say is if they're teary-eyed, it's a little bit of crying, and they're still able to have the conversation, keep going. Give them a tissue. It's absolutely okay if somebody wants to cry. Give them a tissue and continue the conversation. Now, if somebody's having an emotional breakdown, a total sob going on, same thing as what we did with anger. We probably want to take a break and saying, okay, we're going to take a break for 15, 20 minutes. If there's other people there, I don't want to single out the person who's crying. So I'm going to say, you know, we're all going to run to the restroom, whatever else it is. We will start again in 15 or 20 minutes. You choose how much time you want to give for that break. And that's a way to manage the tears. Now, what if you have somebody who's just doing silence, a total shutdown, they're not saying anything? Wait. Just wait. You see, we have 70% of the population that think inside their head. So when it's their turn to talk, if we interrupt their thinking, we're being disrespectful. Give them time to think about it. Now, occasionally you will have someone to use that as a tactic to get out of saying anything. And here's what happens. When you wait for them, it will get them, oh, I actually have to say something here. You see, they were just waiting for you to interrupt the silence and let them off the hook in terms of responding. When you do wait for them, they realize, oh, okay, I've got to respond. Now, you're sitting there going, wow, that's tough. Yes, and silence is powerful. Wait them out. If it's going to take more than 5 or 10 minutes, which occasionally happens, if you're like I am, you start getting antsy. So what I do is something like this. I'll say, I'm waiting for you. I'm happy to give you as much time as you want. While you're thinking, I'm going to be working on something right here, in my notebook or whatever else. And then I can be working in my notebook while they have the silence, and I'm just waiting for them. And it's a very clear message that it's their turn to talk. Now, what if you have the denial? Somebody saying, it wasn't me, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. Well, here's the bottom line. Does it really matter who it was? As a conflict coach, what am I going to do? I'm going to focus on where do we want to go. Okay, so we say, you know what, I wasn't there, I have no idea. Here's what I do know. Let's talk about where we're at, because then we can figure out where you want to go. And you simply shift it. It's an irrelevant point. Now, as far as blame, if somebody's pointing fingers at someone else and, hey, someone else did it, da-da-da-da-da, I want to diffuse that. And the way I'm going to diffuse that is I'm going to say to people, okay, I'm hearing that, let's go here. Within your control, what is it that you do, that you do control, and where do you want to go? What do you want the answer to be? And you pull them back in to the focus of solving whatever's going on. Now, every once in a while, you say, okay, we're totally stuck. We are at this impasse. How do I deal with that? If you have an impasse, there are a number of techniques that are incredibly effective. Number one is simply saying, okay, so I'm hearing an impasse. Let me ask all of you, what happens if you don't solve this? What happens if you do solve this? And they're going to figure out that it's worth fixing. And then they'll start coming up with something. A different option is to say, what is your best case scenario? What is your worst case scenario? And have them start exploring there. Another option is to start talking through different options. Okay, if this is the answer, what's that look like moving forward? If that's the answer, what does that look like moving forward? And start exploring some of the different options. The idea is you continue that conversation. The reasons conflict coaching works, each person is heard, each person is understood, each person is part of the solution, and that is incredibly powerful. Now, I do want to share a number of resources with you very quickly, and I've got a little something for you as well. So resources available. In terms of coaching, the gold standard in the coaching profession is the International Coach Federation. Of course, the Center for Coaching Certification is where I work. We teach people coaching. And then we have the Center for Coaching Solutions, where we provide coaching services in addition to training and helping you start and run coaching programs. The Coach Federation, International Coach Federation website is coachfederation.org. If you're involved in coaching, you definitely want to be involved there. The Center for Coaching Certification, of course, we are delighted to have you check us out as an option for coaching training, coach certification. The Center for Coaching Solutions, our sister company, is where we have coaches available for you. If you want to bring someone in as a conflict coach, you know, that whole idea of anyone that's from outside of town and carries a suitcase is an expert, that gives you an option there as well. Other resources. We do blogs, and on our blog site you'll see all kinds of stuff, and this topic does come up. We have books available, free webinars just like this. We're also open to a quick chat. If you say, you know, I want a 5-minute call to ask a quick question, or I want to send you an email and ask a quick question, we're great with that. We definitely want to be a resource for you. And if you are looking to outsource consulting, training, or coaching, we're available for that as well. The blog site is through the Center for Coaching Certification and through the Center for Coaching Solutions. Our books, every year we publish a new book. It's the Coaching Perspective series. Number 4 is about 80% done, 90% done. We're looking forward to having that one out within the next month or so here. The free webinars, just like this one, we do one a month, and every other month we have a 60-minute webinar. If you're on our newsletter list, you're getting those. As I mentioned, definitely available if you want to have just a quick call or email. For the outsourcing, consulting services, training, and coaching through the Center for Coaching Solutions, we're thrilled to make services available there. Now, what are your next steps right now? What do I have for you? First off is a free consultation. If you email me and say, yes, I'm interested, I will send you a link to my calendar. You can pick a 30-minute time slot on my calendar, put your name and phone number there, and for that 30 minutes, it will be your time. So that's available to each of you simply because you're here. So thank you for being here. Choose the resources that you want. We've thrown out a lot here. It's about looking at what makes sense, and it's about planning your own process and then implementing your strategy so that you achieve the results. I'm Kathy. Here's my email address, Kathy at Center for Coaching Solutions. Our 800 number is here. And after today's webinar, I will email everyone who registered a link. I'm going to load this recording on the YouTube channel. So I'll send you a link if you want to go see it again. It'll be available there, and you can check that out. You will have that link. If you want, you can reply to that email and say, yes, I want that free 30 minutes. Give me the link, and I will send you the link to my calendar. I definitely appreciate each and every one of you here. I'm recognizing a lot of the names, and I've got a lot of new names as well. Excited to be available and to be of service. Thank you, everyone, so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and enjoy your weekend.